Oi boys, welcome to another video on the channel. 'Tis the season for rugby league fans, the best time of the year, and with the preseason challenge done and dusted, it's time to make some predictions on how we think the ladder will look come the end of the regular season. Now I do want to preface this by saying these predictions will most likely age like milk. Keep that in mind if you do end up feeling some type of way. Let's run it. So coming in at the dreaded 17th, the Wooden Spooners, it's actually a pretty tough decision. And for mine, I've got the Bulldogs, who again come into a new season with a plethora of changes. A ton of people coming in, a ton of people getting shipped out. Not too sure how much of an impact the new recruits will have, but they do have quality people coming in. Steve Crichton, who was named their new skipper, experience at a guy like Hutchison, and some potential game breakers like a Josh Curran. Blokes like Sualii and Jamin Salmon did look good for them in trials, but yeah, I'm seeing much of the same things for the Bulldogs this season. Coming in at 16th, I've got the Canberra Raiders. Now, like I was saying, I do think it'll be highly contested throughout all levels of the ladder, and honestly I could see any of the bottom 4 teams picking up the spoon. What's been their biggest weakness, not just heading into the new season, but for these past few seasons, is the lack of spark and X factor within the spine. And I mean, no disrespect to their current spine players, but they're still lacking when it comes to those certain positions. They have been scraping into the 8s these past couple of seasons, playing a style of footy that just isn't sustainable, heavily reliant on their forward pack, not having that X factor or spark out the back. You could say most teams have at least one elite hooker, half or fullback, and for the Raiders, at the moment, there are none. I'm actually real keen to see how their youngsters go, because they do have a few exciting up-and-comers, as we've seen in the preseason trials. But yeah, for mine, I've got Sticky's Raiders in 16th. Coming in at 15th, I've got the St. George Illawarra Dragons. The consensus these past few years in regards to the ladder, the Dragons have been the favourites for the spoon, and to their credit, they have dodged it these past few years. Roster-wise, like the Bulldogs, they've got a bunch of players coming in and out. They've got a couple notable players: Raymond Faitala-Mariner, Kyle Flanagan, Luciano Leilua, James Sele, and Christian Duipolotu. No real game breakers. Unlike the previous 2 teams we talked about, they already have that type of talent in a Ben Hunt, Zach Lomax, Moses Sualii even to a degree, although I'll probably get pushback on that. Their biggest gain for the season, and why I see them doing slightly better than last year, is their new coach, a premiership winning coach, Shane Flanagan, who I think can do something with the current Dragons roster. They have always shown that they could contend with sort of the mid-tier teams. I'm interested to see what he can do with some of the talented players that we mentioned, the Ben Hunts and Zach Lomaxes, at his disposal. But yeah, the Dragons, 15th. Coming in at 14th, I've got Benji's West's Tigers. Currently the back-to-back Wooden Spooners. I do see a little bit of improvement in them. In terms of recruitment, they have lost quite a few players. Fringies at most, and Luke Brooks. And the blokes they got coming in, it's actually a good crop of recruitment. They've got some young Sea Eagles talent in the Fainu brothers, Latu and Samuela, and a bit of experience in Justin Olam and Aiden Caesar, along with Dragon Jr. Jaden Sullivan, or Bud Sullivan. The aforementioned pair most likely will be the halves pairing heading into the new year, with those two joining the spine of both Uppy and a young Jareem Buller. I could see them making a bit of noise this season, but ultimately don't see them breaking out of that bottom 4. In at 13th, I've got the Gold Coast Titans. So this is getting a little interesting. Any of these teams could potentially play finals. These teams that sit around or outside of the 8s. These past few years, we've seen that they can play some pretty exciting attacking footy, but couldn't defend to save their lives. We could potentially see a shift with the appointment of their new coach, another former premiership winning coach in Des Hasler. Granted, it has been over a decade since he saw that success, and between then and now, he hasn't had the greatest of track records. For the times they did play finals, they ended up losing by pretty hefty margins. It does make me wonder whether Des is that guy to tighten up their defense. That remains to be seen, and I can't really see them placing any higher than what I have them at, which again is 13th. Coming in at 12th, I've got the Redcliffe Dolphins. They had a pretty good first season. There was a lot of chat around them not having a marquee signing, and Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow ended up being that. And for their first run in the league, I'd say they overachieved, as the general consensus had them finishing towards the bottom of the ladder. Ultimately finishing in 13th, I have them going one better this year with the new recruits of A couple of gun Broncos in Herbie Farnworth and Tom Flegler. Also Jake Averillo, who can be a bit of a handful himself out in the centres if he's being played there. Much like a lot of these lower rated teams, I'm not too sure how many games O'Sullivan ended up playing, but it felt like he was missing for most of the season. The gamble with Milford didn't pay off. Although it did reignite a couple other former Broncos in Nikodima and Desi Newell, as well as Jermaine Isaako, playing some near career best footy. Back to recruitment, I do think they made the perfect signings. Flegler there to aid a tired, aging forward pack, as well as Herbie, who was an ultimate workhorse to help carry the heavy load. I won't be surprised if they end up sneaking into the 8s, but I have them finishing the regular season in 12th. Coming in at number 11, we've got the Manly-Warringah Sea Eagles. I think we all know what the recipe to success is for Manly, and that is a fully fit Tom Trbojevic. Not saying with him being fully fit they'll be contenders for the title, but they should be in contention for a spot in finals. Stylistically though, they seem like an easy team to read. Defensively for the top tier teams, which has been evident in their wins and losses these past couple seasons. So much so that a lot of people gave them the flat track bully moniker. I do like the signing of Luke Brooks and Schuster being moved to what will most likely be the left edge. Those two changes should add another layer or another dimension to their attack. Is it enough to put them any higher than where I've got them at the moment? It's a no, and that's all I've got for number 11. Coming in at number 10, it is getting super tight here. I've got the North Queensland Cowboys, finishing outside the 8 last year after a surprising 2022 season where they finished at 3rd. I see that being their peak. I just think for the most part they are a team that have been quote unquote figured out. There's a few of these teams now you can see that they've hammered down on defense, and it's evident in the way they play. The Cowboys are one, and I kind of felt like they ran out of steam last year. As for recruitment, they've got Jake Clifford coming over from Hull FC and Big Thomas Mikaele from the Gold Coast Titans, as well as a Viliami Vailea who rounds off like their 3 biggest signings. As we all know, Luciano Leilo's been released, but enter Kulikefu Finefi who will get more game time. I don't really have much else to say about them. Their main roster's pretty much intact, and that could be beneficial. I guess time will tell. Coming in at 9th, I've got the Parramatta Eels. I pretty much have them scrapping off the mid-tiers again. Like the Cowboys, they haven't at all signed any high-profile players. They don't really need it, as they still have Gutho, Dylan Brown and Mitchell Moses. I actually do have their 2 recruits. They signed Morgan Harper and Kalma Tuilangi. But yeah, I don't know, the Eels are a bit of a tough read. Like the Cowboys, their main roster's still intact. Their forward pack's getting a bit up there in age with Reg and Junior Paulo, not to mention Gutho as well at the back. People questioning whether he had enough X-Factor at the back for them last year. Those Gutho X-Factor talks will be back. All it's going to take is a couple of losses in a row. For me, they're kind of stagnant, which is why I have them finishing around where they finished last year. Moving on to who I think will be playing finals at 8th, I've got the Cronulla Sharks. Grand opening, grand closing when it comes to finals. The Fitzgibbon era has been, I'd say, a success so far, but much like Manly, the Sharks seem to crumble when they come against stiff competition. Also, like the 2 teams before them, there hasn't been notable recruits, and they haven't really lost much when it comes to their starting lineup. Of course, Matt Moylan being shipped to the Super League. You've got Trindle coming in. Will he be enough to elevate the Sharks to get them to break through the ceiling that they're currently at, which is the kings of the mid-tiers? I'm not so sure. Seeing them play in the All-Stars match was interesting, as it seemed like Trindle did most of the steering, but you can't really take much away from that. With no changes to their forward pack, again, it's hard to gauge or predict whether they'll improve or not, so I'm looking at their draw, and I've got them finishing right around where they did last season. Coming in at 7th, I've got the Newcastle Knights. In terms of recruitment, they've got, looking for standouts, Jack Cogger potentially playing in the halves for them, Tom Jenkins on the wing, Kai Pierce-Paul in the back row, as well as Will Price. A lot of contention for that left edge that has been left available by the departure of Lachlan Fitzgibbon. During the preseason, it looked like they favoured Lucas, but we'll see what happens there. Basically, there's one reason why I'm picking the Knights to make the 8 again, and that is KP. Kalyn Ponga having one of it might be his best season yet, going on a crazy run last year, and ultimately bowing out in finals. I see them taking it a step further if Kalyn Ponga is to stay injury-free, knock on wood. Coming in at number 6, I've got the Sydney underachievers, the Roosters, who have been disappointing these last couple seasons. predicted to be in contention for the title by many, and rightfully so, because the team on paper is insane. They've just had no direction, no chemistry in attack. Luke Keary's kind of regressed, actually a lot, and Sam Walker ended up getting dropped. He did come back late last year and he looked good, but I'm not buying into the hype. I'm keen to see who they have working in tandem with Brandon Smith, because Sandon Smith coming off the bench for them last year was quality, and all of a sudden that 14 role with Connor Watson being fully fit and ready to go raises some interesting questions. On paper, at worst, they should make the 8s. They have a world-class front row, forward pack at that, and actual world-class outside backs. It just gets a little iffy in the control room. Luke Keary and Sam Walker, no consistency, no chemistry. They'll be one to keep an eye on this season, but yeah, for me, I got them finishing in 6th. Now, just missing the top 4, coming in at 5th for me, I've got the New Zealand Warriors, the overachievers. The wild card last year, no one knew what to say about them, how they'd finish and all that, and they finished in the top 4. From what I've seen of the Warriors last year, on and off the field, it's actually looking like a turning point for the Warriors. I've seen a few former players and mainstream media in general predicting a fall off, much like Cronulla and the Cowboys, but I don't know, man. Stylistically, they are comparable to the Cowboys of 2022 with that defense-heavy playstyle. I don't think they'll fall off though. Recruitment-wise, they've made some pretty gun moves, signing Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, Chanel Harris-Tavita, and Kurt Capewell. Now, if Sean Johnson can stay fit, knock on wood, I do think they can fight for a spot in the 4, but like I said, I got them at 5th. And now for the top 4, coming in at number 4, I've got the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Another disappointing year. I mean, what's worse than disappointing? At one point in the season, they were favourites to take out the comp, and they had a Brisbane Bronco-esque fall from grace. They didn't even make finals last year. Apparently there's a whole bunch of rubbish happening behind the scenes, but that's neither here or there. I've got them getting back on track in 2024. They made a couple signings, one Sean Kepi and another huge signing in Jack Whiten. They are still a little light in the front row and their rotation in general, plus they've had plenty of injuries, not to mention Latrell Mitchell not being on the field for what felt like most of the season. I know it probably wasn't, but yeah, you'll see the theme. Like KP, like Sean Johnson, if Latrell can play for most of the season, I do see them cracking that top 4 and making a serious run for the premiership this year. Coming in at number 3, we've got the Melbourne Storm. I mean, Harry Grant, Cameron Munster, Jerome Hughes, Ryan Pappenhausen, need I say more? It's kind of like the opposite of the Raiders, you know, they've got all the star power in their backline, but a bit of a lackluster forward pack, ill-disciplined forward pack, which is un-Melbourne-like. Ryan Pappenhausen looks like he's ready to go. Seeing him run around in the pre-games or the pre-season challenge, I'm a little excited to see what they can do this year. As far as signings are concerned, they only signed Sean Bloor, who does have a lot of potential, by the way, and I'm really interested to see how Bellamy uses him. But yeah, there's nothing much else to say about the Storm. I mean, that spine alone should get you in the top 4 every year. Coming in hot at number 2, I've got the Brisbane Broncos, which means I have the Panthers finishing the 2024 regular season as your minor premiers. So yeah, the Broncos, they're losing a lot in Herbie Farnworth and Thomas Flegler. Both were instrumental to their success last year and will be tough boots to fill, but even without them, I do think they're a class above the rest of the league. I guess we'll soon find out. But these two teams were 1 and 2 last year, and I do think it'll be the same this year, only the gap between them and the rest of the league, or the rest of the 8 I should say, won't be as big as it was last year. For the Panthers, I mean, it's hard to tip against the Panthers. I know it's a boring pick, but they have the best system we've seen for years, and it's evident in their numerous premierships going back to back to back. You could say each year being more impressive than the last because they were losing troops. Their latest losses are one Stephen Crichton, who has been their game breaker for the last couple of years, or the last few years. But yeah, ultimately I do think they'll land around the top 2. I don't see the Panthers slowing down, which is a pain to say, but they are the big dogs right now, the undisputed champions of the NRL. But yeah, that's my 2024 ladder prediction for this upcoming season. If you have predictions of your own, let me know in the comments section down below. For now, we're going to call it there. As always, if you enjoyed that, be sure to hit the like button for more rugby league related content, or more content in general. Go ahead and drop your boy a cheeky sub. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you later.